Hey, it's John F. Gately. You can call me Jack. Welcome to our live stream on Saturday. What is it, October 7th? It is October 7th. Thanks so much for coming. So I wanted to just do a quick live stream this morning, Saturday, to cover the story that we broke yesterday at my Substack. That's johnfgately.substack.com. And let's just bring it right up on the screen right now for you. States spent $471,000 in 2022 to house a single homeless family in emergency shelter. Now, that was the highest they spent. The lowest they spent was $153 in the final quarter of 2022, with an average spending per homeless family of $65,000 per homeless family. Now, this information is from a public records request that we placed to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts because they had not published a quarterly legislative report for about 2 years, going on 2 years. So I was looking at the state website and I said, whoa, they hadn't published a report for a long time. I wonder why that was. And I just filed a public records request, and all credit to them. They actually fulfilled that request in a reasonable amount of time, about a week and a half or so. So these new reports are the latest data about how much this program is costing us. And this is the program, the emergency shelter program, the emergency assistance shelter program, that is ballooning at the hotels and motels, mostly due to a major impact from the border crisis, the fact that we have an open border with Mexico and with Canada, for that matter, for the most part. So this is huge money that we're spending on a regular basis to support our open border policy. Well, the Biden administration's open border policy. So let's get back into the Substack. The Commonwealth spent $471,000 to house a single family in late 22. As we said, these, again, new records just released yesterday from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. The average stay in emergency assistance was 428 days. This is from the second quarter of fiscal year 23. So just to give a little precision on that, that would be October, November, and December of last year. That's the most recent date that this information is available, which, again, I just got released to me yesterday from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 428 days on average. That's over 14 months of so-called emergency assistance to house somebody, mostly in some type of shelter and or motel or hotel. You know the story. That's an average. Check this out. If you average that out, that's an average of $4,587 per month per family. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm guessing your rent is lower than $4,500 a month. Is it? I know that even for my mortgage and the rent for this space, if I combine the office rent here or my studio rent and my mortgage, it's less than $4,500. But the state is spending on average $4,500 a month for emergency assistance per homeless household as of late 2022. Again, the least they spent on a single family was $153, and I assume that is one night in a motel. And the most they spent in that quarter for a single family was $471,000. As someone on Facebook the other day said, you could have bought someone a house for that amount, right? You could have bought somebody a house for that. I wonder how many Habitat for Humanity houses you can build for $471,000. This is a picture of the Rio Grande. This is at Eagle Pass. I took this myself back in August of 2022 when I was there. Okay, so here is a lift from these reports. Now, these reports, the most recent ones that were released yesterday, are not on the state website. They just emailed them to me, but I am making them available to anybody through a Google Drive link, which you can get through my Substack at johnfgately.substack.com. So here we are for Q2 of fiscal year 2023. Average days in shelter, 428, as we said. Now, this data is a very important kind of footnote at the bottom of this data, based on households completing an episode of homelessness within the EA system during this reporting period. So when I looked at these numbers, I said to myself, this has got to be a statistical anomaly. This can't be right. Right? These numbers, 471,000 for one family, $65,000 on average. These can't be right. So I went back to the reports for the prior couple of quarters, and this is what I found. In the prior quarter, we also spent on average $65,000 per family per episode of homelessness, with a total or a high, I should say, of one family receiving a assistance of $354,000. For the quarter before that, the average was $51,000, with the high of one single family receiving an episode of homelessness, $335,000. For the quarter before that, the average was $55,000, with the high of one single family experiencing an episode of homelessness of $406,000. So, I mean, so when I first looked at these numbers that I have here, that I excerpted here from the state report, I was like, oh no, that's got to be wrong. No, actually, that's what it is. Quarter after quarter, we're spending somewhere between $50,000 to $65,000 on average per homeless family per episode of homelessness, and the average stay is in the 400-day range. That's well over a year. So this is not just an emergency, like, a month, 2-3 months. This is a long period of living in a motel, which has got to be horrific, right? If you've ever, lived in a motel and or just even stayed with your family at a hotel, after like 3 days, like, unless you're in some like beautiful, like, resort type of thing, after 3 days or 4 days, you're like, okay, time to go home, right? The state, let's bring this up here for you. The state has not posted a quarterly emergency assistant legislative report since the months of July, August, and September of 2021. Wonder why that is. And they will not be reporting the 2023 numbers because they're, quote, still being drafted and will need to be reviewed before dissemination. In other words, even though the quarter, which would be the third fiscal quarter and the fourth fiscal quarter of fiscal year 2023, even though those quarters are well over, they're still drafting the reports and they need to be reviewed. Okay. Yeah. So it's just absolutely astounding. I did hear in this particular situation here, I went and posted the lift for the prior quarter. And as you can see there, again, $65,000 on average, with a low of 153 and a high of $354,000. Now, if we go over to the BUR story from a couple of days ago, there was an exceptionally good chart. Here it is here. Wonder if I can shrink that down for you to see it a little bit better, of how much money we're spending on this program. There you go, right there. The green line is the $325 million that the state legislature has already approved for emergency assistance this year. And the purple at the top there is the estimated supplemental request. That's another $250 million that the governor has requested. Now, let's see if I can pull this up for you. Give me a quick second. The Speaker of the House yesterday told State House News Service. Let me just see if I can bring this up for you really quickly. Here we are here. Told the State House News Service yesterday that we're still up in the air about the $250 million. Is it way too much, or is $250 million nowhere enough, said Speaker Ron Mariano from Quincy. The next day, in another legislative-related conference, he said that the 250 is just the beginning, and, quote, we have no idea what the total bill is going to be. And I don't know about you, but one of the reasons why I think they might not know the total bill is because they're not publishing the reports, right? That the legislature is not getting the information that they would need to make a reasonable decision. I had to, as I told you, I had to file a public records request to get this information. Now, the other day, just to kind of put this dollars in perspective, the governor is proposing that she spend $575 million on this program in this fiscal year. Now, the other day, you know that the governor signed this well-touted tax cut proposal, right? And how much was that going to cost the Commonwealth in this fiscal year? That tax cut program was going to be $561 million in this fiscal year. But the spending on the emergency assistance program is more than that. The spending on the emergency assistance program is more than the tax cut that they just all congratulated themselves on. So, you know, the Democrats are always saying, oh, the budget reflects our values. In this moment, the budget reflects our values. I guess their values is more about putting people in motels rather than putting money in your pocket so that you can invest it at your will and you can generate more economic activity so that you can live a more prosperous life. No, that's not what's going to happen. That's not what's going to happen. So, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? As most of you know, the only reason why we have this expenditure is because there's a right to shelter law in Massachusetts. No, that is not the case. There is no right to shelter in Massachusetts. That's wrong. There is a right to shelter in New York City, because in New York City, let's see if I can get this article to show up. Here we go. Here in New York City, there is a famous consent decree, which the mayor has just asked the courts to rescind and or amend. But we don't have that type of consent decree in Massachusetts. This crisis in Massachusetts is not foisted upon us by a consent decree. It's foisted upon us entirely by a law we passed. And the lawmakers on Beacon Hill are just pretending that we can't do anything about it. It's a law. They make the laws. They can change it. They can also choose to fund it or not fund it. They are choosing to fund it. There is no consent decree that requires us to provide this housing in Massachusetts like there is in New York City. Mayor Adams has to do this because there's a Supreme Court consent decree in New York City. We don't have to do this in Massachusetts because there is no consent decree here. This crisis, and be sure that it's functioning as a magnet for people to come to Massachusetts. This crisis is completely and absolutely self-inflicted. And if your legislature wanted to, they could change that today if they wanted to. No. Instead, they're going to complain to the congressional delegation that they need more resources, because only that will fix the problem. That's the plan. In fact, Governor Haley considered, according to the Boston Herald, considered suspending the right to shelter law, but scrapped the idea, housing advocates say, according to the Boston Herald from September 8th. That was a month ago. The reason why she considered that is because she knows it's a disaster. And she also knows that she can't actually unilaterally just suspend a law unless there's a declaration of an emergency. And as you know, she verbally declared an emergency, but she did not declare the same type of emergency as Governor Baker did, for instance, during the pandemic. And that, how well that went, 2 weeks to bend the curve, right? That went really well. So what happened earlier this week is that the legislative leaders on Beacon Hill, minus the Republicans, because they don't really count anyways, the Republican leaders, what a joke. They're the same Republican leaders that worked in the building when I worked in the building almost 30 years ago. They're in the tank. So Bruce Tarr, Brad Jones especially, he's the worst. So instead, under pressure, the Biden administration is to send a team to assess migrant situation in Massachusetts. We don't need a team from the Biden administration to come to Massachusetts and tell us what the problem is. We already know what the problem is. The problem is the open border in Texas and California and Arizona, and for that matter, to the Great White North, right? We know what the problem is. This article in today's Globe is literally just cover for the congressional delegation so they can say, we're doing something. We're looking into it. We asked the Biden administration to look into it. This is absolutely just cover. That's all it is. That's all it is. When you're spending this much money, up to $471,000 for one family, something is wrong. Something is wrong. And we're going to get further into the demographics on this report at some other time, not in this particular live stream, and on a different Facebook post, on a different Substack post, because the demographics are startling. But here is the state website that originally got these reports. As you can see, the most recent one was from FY22 Q1. And I was like, where are the other reports? Because that was over 2 years ago. So where are the other reports? And I was like, let's file a request. And that's how we got to the point where I was able to publish this Substack article, which we led today's live stream with. I wanted to fairly quickly, let's see if I can bring this up for you fairly quickly, just talk about the most recent demographics on the people that are in emergency assistance. Here we go here. So this is from the most recent quarterly report. The demographics are in Q2. That would have been ending of December 2022. Black, African American, or African, 32%. Hispanic, Latino, 41% in the emergency assistance program. White, 16%. Other, 1%. Unknown, 9%. So just to give you some perspective, I have these numbers here. These are rough numbers, but roughly speaking, Massachusetts currently is about 70% white, 7 or 8% African American, and about 12 or 13% Hispanic Latino. So clearly, African Americans and Hispanic Latino are way overrepresented in these numbers. So they do not, this should not come as a huge surprise to you, but they do not actually collect whether or not you're a U.S. citizen or a non-U.S. citizen. Probably because when they originally envisioned this program, they never thought that that would be a question that they'd want to ask. And now that it is a question that any rational person would want to ask on an intake form, now they don't want to do that. They don't want to ask that question. Because what we're going to find out is that the program is vastly populated by people that are not actually U.S. citizens. Just look at the demographics. Does those demographics, do they reflect the demographics of Massachusetts? No. No, they don't. They don't want to know how many non-U.S. citizens are in the emergency assistance program. They don't want to know because that would shine a bright light on what actually is causing the problem. And that, again, is our open border. We don't need Biden administration officials to come to Massachusetts to assess the problem. We know what the problem is. All right, we'll get more deeper into the demographics of the situation, and I'll bring you more details on the reports that just got released on Friday at my Substack. That's johnfgately.substack.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.